Hi everyone,
G'day.
and welcome to Parkside Live. Thanks for joining us, wherever you're joining us from. Want to write a comment, tell us where you're watching from, and comment as we're chatting. We'd love to hear from you. Or if you want to ask us some questions or find out anything about Parkside, send us a message, via our socials, or comment on this post, and we'll get back to you. It'll be really cool. And I hope that tonight our conversation on the experience trap will encourage you and maybe challenge you too.
Yeah. Sometimes our past experiences can inform how we see the future. Matter of fact, that's often the case. And for me, when we were first married, I would come home from work when you'd been doing a lot of work at home, and particularly the work of looking after the kids. And you'd be asking people, "Oh, can you just pick this up, or can you please set the table?" And I got a little bit frustrated at the lack of response. People, sometimes our kids wouldn't answer you. Sometimes they were very slow to do what you want. And so I took the role on myself to be the person who got results. That if you had asked a question, I was the one who made sure that our kids stopped and answered you. If you asked for some assistance, I was the one who made sure that that happened and that they helped you. And often that began, I think, because I was a little bit unfamiliar because I'd been out of the house. And so me speaking into a situation would add a little bit of emphasis that perhaps got lost because they'd been listening to you all day. Sometimes I would speak sternly. Sometimes, if that didn't work, well, I'd raise my voice, and sometimes I even just used my size to stand close to our kids and get their attention. And so the way that I saw myself, the results together, the one who made it happen, held true, and it guided my actions. As I was watching, though, the impact of my actions, I noticed that really what was at work was there was a level of fear involved in how our kids responded to me. And I thought, I want to be the person who gets results. I don't want to be a person who influences by fear. And so then I was at a bit of a decision point. Do I continue to get results the way that I did, or do I change my approach? And I think the way that I saw myself up until then, I'd worked in situations that were usually dominated by a fair bit of testosterone, I think. Being able to apply energy to a situation solved 9 out of 10 problems. But it didn't work in this situation. And so the way that I saw myself had to change, really. And that's what we want to explore, is we can get to these decision points in our life where we go, well, up until this point, my experience of life, my experience of myself, my experience of maybe the roles that I fill have led me to see myself in a certain way. And then we encounter a situation and then we go, how do I move forward? And I wonder, as you're watching this, whether you've ever had a moment like that where the way that you have seen yourself is challenged and you have to decide, do I stick with it or do I make a change in my life? I don't know. Have you ever had a challenge to the way that you perceive yourself?
Yeah, I think for a long time, the way I perceived myself, and some of it was because of external things, but then some of it, you start to own and think about, I thought I wasn't worth anything, therefore I could not lead anyone or do anything like that. But then, there were kind of these desires that came up in me that made me want to do that, but it challenged but that's not me. Like, I'm not someone who leads, or I'm not someone who goes and talks to strangers. I'm not someone who will step out. I'm like, the fear, would keep me. But then, I guess some people around me who encouraged me into leadership roles, or even just, as my relationship with God grew, and he was like, do you trust me enough to step into this? that things changed. It was no longer could the excuse of, but that's just me. That didn't work anymore. It's like, it's not just you, like there's something more.
Yeah, and if you're watching this, now might be a good time to pause and either reflect on some of your own experiences or even discuss with whoever you're watching this with a time when your self-concept has been challenged. And what we want to do tonight is we want to explore, actually, draw some inspiration from the scriptures about what that looks like, particularly as we are moving through this world in faith. We want to see that. And so I'm going to read here from Matthew chapter 6. And it's just a few short thoughts. And Jesus is actually recorded as speaking, and he says this: when you pray, don't babble on as people from other religions do. They think their prayers are heard merely by repeating their words again and again. Don't be like them, for your Father knows exactly what you need before you ask him. Pray like this: Our Father in heaven, may your name be kept holy. May your kingdom come soon. May your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And then the prayer goes on, and you may be familiar with this. This may be very new to you. But as we start here, clearly this is a teaching on prayer. And when we are looking at this, it is given in the place of a whole lot of other teaching where Jesus was saying, look, there's a new way of living. This is a different way. And up until this point, most of that teaching focuses on identity, who you are, and then some key practices. He says, look, once upon a time, you heard it said this was the way to go. And then he would follow statements like that up with, this is the way. It's a new way. And when we read this, I don't know if you're new to prayer. It may be something that you've tried before, or meditation. It may be something that you're not keen on. But on this teaching with prayer, he starts off with a new way that if you read through the scriptures, people think of God in many different ways. As a matter of fact, right now in our world, people can talk about the power of the universe being at work for you. People can talk about life just worked out for me, or life's against me. We can even talk in vague terms about, someone upstairs is watching over you. And yet Jesus sets us up here and he says, look, we want to begin by seeing this person greater than me, greater than you, as someone beyond us, but also someone involved in our lives, a father. And while the idea of a father now is different, in our generation, fathers are spending up to 30% more time with their kids than their fathers did. That is a different approach to fathering. And yet, he says, when you come to God, he goes, there is someone who cares, who wants to provide, and who wants to be involved in your life. And even that simple statement may contradict your experience of fatherhood here. And we recognise that. We're not trying to make any judgment on that, but what we want to tell you is that when we think of God, that he is someone who cares, someone who wants to provide, and who wants to be involved in your life. And this whole idea of just shaping our idea of God influences the way that we are going to live our lives. For example, when I was growing up, the idea of the power of the Creator, of someone who could speak and galaxies came into existence, someone who could speak and have people's lives transformed and healed, was very appealing to me. And power can be used for great things. But we also live in a time when we are seeing people grasp after power and then use that power for their own benefit. People who get into positions of government and then use those positions in government for their own financial gain. People who get into positions of great influence in companies and organisations and then use that to benefit themselves. people who have had power and have used that to intimidate others. And so when we focus on maybe that attribute of God, it's quite easy to see how that would trickle down into our lives. And whether or not you believe in God, the thing that you define as most powerful, most influential in your life will define how you move through this world, how you treat others. If you think that money is what gives you power, you will seek that and push others aside in order to gain that. I want to ask you, what do you see as the most meaningful attribute of God for you?
I think it's hard to pick one, but straight away, just love comes to mind for me.
Yeah.
Because I know that when I first started thinking about God and encountering Him, it was an experience of His love, and the fact that I was loved was just this amazing thing. And so it's His love, you know, despite mistakes I might make, or when I'm feeling that I'm less than perfect, and feeling maybe unloved around me. That was the thing, and still is a big thing. So because He loves, I guess that's the thing. Like you, and you know, if you're thinking that God is powerful and the power is what maybe you're looking around for, then because He loves, I don't know. I mean, He had to do a lot of work in me, but maybe I can feel more compassion and love for others. As a this earth because of that.
And we're living in a time where we have seen key people in government who claim to be people of faith say, no, empathy is weak.
Yeah.
We're not into that. And then it's no surprise when people in government, like with those opinions, produce policies that are lacking in compassion, produce policies that separate families from their children. Excuse me. And as you're watching this, you know, you may not even be a person who believes, and yet I wonder what character trait you find most meaningful in your life or in the lives of those you admire. For those who are of faith, we can take a bit of a step back and say, what character trait of God do I find most meaningful? And as we explore here, we see these words, may your name be kept holy. And that word holy, it means to be set apart.
Yeah.
And the invitation here of faith is to move through the world in such a way that people can recognize that there is something different, something unique. And there's lots of ways to be different. There's lots of ways to be unique. And yet what we're searching for here is, well, what does it mean to live according to God's purpose? Matter of fact, right here, the very next line in this prayer is, may your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And so this whole idea of living with purpose, a different purpose perhaps than what you encounter around you, flows from an understanding of what the creator of the universe is working towards in this world. And when we talk about what is most meaningful, you know, you've just described the idea of love. You may have picked a different character trait, but what we identify is what we will move towards. And when we are looking at our own lives, if we feel like we are being confronted with who we are, how do we step into something new? Yeah. It's by giving ourselves to a greater cause than who we are. It's by giving ourselves to someone outside of who we are that will actually change how we see ourselves. It will change how we see our place in the world. And see this very next line here that says, may your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Now, does that evoke a particular scene for you?
Yeah, if I think about heaven then, and go, you know, this is what we want on earth, I think of somewhere where there is, firstly, like everything is centered around God and who He is. So there's that worship living for, He's the center of everything. And so if you bring that to heaven, to earth, then, personally, I would want to be seeing, experiencing, living that kind of just, you were talking about purpose, like purpose for Him and with Him, but then seeing, the Bible talks about heaven being a place where there is no more tears, no more pain, and so I want to, bringing that to earth, wanting to see people being healed, people being set free from grief and pain and all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
And that idea of in heaven, there is another ancient writing, and someone had a vision, and in that vision they saw a picture of what they imagined perfection was like. And part of that vision, John the Revelator writes in Revelation 21, he says that God himself is their temple and God himself is their light. Yeah. This idea that things are most beautiful when it is our Creator that we connect with. Things are most beautiful and most even purposeful when the way that we see in this world is shaped by the one who claims to be the light of the world. And the invitation here, what this reminds me of, is actually another scene in a garden where Jesus actually prayed, God, I don't want to do this. And he went back to his friends and he said, are you with me? And they'd fallen asleep. And so he goes back and he says, God, I don't want to do this. And he goes back to his friends and they'd fallen asleep. And a third time he comes and he says, look, I don't want to do this. And he was speaking actually of just the suffering that he was about to go through. And he says, but may your will be done. And see, what we see here is that this God who wants to provide, this God who cares and wants to be involved in our lives, this God who calls us into something greater, who calls us into perfection, actually calls us to do hard things, calls us to do things beyond our own capability. And that's how you can recognize that you've actually stepped into an adventure of faith. Because sometimes that adventure of faith is overwhelming. Sometimes that adventure of faith is terrifying. Because how you see yourself will be challenged. How you see your place in the world will be challenged. I can do this on my own is not the voice of faith. I'm not loved is not the voice of faith. And that Jesus says, call out to this good God who wants to be involved. Live for a world beyond yourself. Live in such a way that you stand out in this world and give yourselves to the love of God. And we want to tell you that as you're watching this right now, whether this is the first time you've tuned into something like this or the 50th time, that there is a fresh experience of who God is. That we want you to allow the purpose of your life to be shaped by the God who gives love to everyone. That we want to invite you to give yourself to a cause greater than yourself. The cause of Jesus. That everyone may know and experience his love and his power. And if you're ready to take that step of faith, we're going to invite you right now just to pray a simple prayer. And that says, Jesus, I give you my life. I give you my past experiences. Because I want to live your life. I want your will to be done in my life. I want to experience your love fresh. And if that's something that you want to do, then we pray with us right now. Jesus, I give you my life. Give me your life. Jesus, I give you my life. Give me your life. And if you prayed that prayer tonight, we want to invite you to let us know. We'd love to support you on the next step of your journey, whatever that may be. And if you're ever passing through Southwest Sydney, we'd invite you to drop in around this table with friends and share a little bit of the journey with us. Thanks for tuning in. God bless.
Bye.